Fantasy fanfiction. Myth resurrection. I can plan the future in advance. Chapter 21. The bald man looked shocked. He saw the evil smile on Pei Jun's face getting colder and colder, and he suddenly felt a sense of horror and trembling rushing into his brain. Want to break free, but it's too late. Pei Jun snorted coldly and suddenly exerted force on his hands. No. The bald man's exclamation was not heard at all. He only saw his lips moving, and then his neck was directly crushed in Pei Jun's hand. When Pei Jun was outside the door, his keen sense had already noticed that the people in the room were filled with the smell of blood and murderous intent. Obviously these people have a lot of lives on their hands. And when Pei Jun first entered, the murderous intent in the eyes of several people was clearly visible. They came with the purpose of killing. So Mr. Pei didn't hold back at all. The experience and lessons from his previous life told him not to be soft-hearted towards any enemy, and to remove the weeds, root them out. Everything just happened in a flash of lightning. The moment the bald man died in the hands of Pei Jun, several other people's fierce attacks had already arrived in front of Pei Jun. A cold light flashed in front of Pei Jun, and a sharp short knife struck hard at Pei Jun's face. Pei Jun's footsteps changed rapidly, which was exactly the chicken step in Xinyi fist. Pei Jun dodged the incoming short sword in an instant. With a fierce look in his eyes, he used his backhand as a knife and slashed hard at the knife-holding arm before he had time to withdraw. Ah! A scream of extreme pain. The moment the incoming knife-wielding arm came into contact with Pei Jun's palm, it was twisted and broken, and the bones could even be seen piercing the flesh and blood. Blood dripped. The short knife in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. While your illness is killing you, Mr. Pei changes his steps again and rushes forward like a tiger. The fist was drawn like a gun, causing a shocking howl of cold wind. The golden light flowed from the fist, and it hit the chest of the attacker in front of him fiercely. A painful groan. Blood spurted out from the mouth of the man holding the knife, and his chest collapsed in an instant. His whole body was blown away by Pei Jun, and he hit the wall hard. Boom! Amidst the dull impact, a sharp gunshot suddenly sounded. Pei Jun looked stern. I saw the enchanting woman at the end of the floor. When the man with the knife was blasted away by Pei Jun, she suddenly felt something was wrong and took out the pistol. He shot at Pei Jun without hesitation. Although the organization has strictly ordered that firearms must not be used except in life-threatening or critical situations of last resort. Avoid attracting official attention, but Qingmei knows that this is the last resort. Seeing Pei Jun kill two people in a blink of an eye after entering the door, showing terrifying force, Qingmei knew that this mission might be troublesome. The information is wrong. This person is definitely not an ordinary migrant worker. And looking at Pei Jun's fierce eyes from beginning to end, there is no discomfort at all like killing someone for the first time. Qingmei even had the illusion that compared to the rest of them, Pei Jun was more like an executioner who killed people like crazy and had no regard for life. And the strength is extremely terrifying. It's simply not something they can solve. I'm afraid even the captain may not be able to solve it. So when the man with the knife flew backwards, Qingmei didn't hesitate at all. She directly took out the pistol from her waist and pulled the trigger hard under the cover of darkness. Boom! Dazzling firelight flashed in the darkness, and sharp bullets tore through the air and shot straight at Pei Jun. After the successful shooting, Qingmei finally breathed a sigh of relief, and the terrifying crisis that had been pressing in her heart suddenly dissipated. After all, no matter how terrifying the force is, you can't dodge bullets. It's time to think about how to end things. But just when Qingmei thought everything was going to end, a clear ringtone suddenly came from the silent room. Ding! Qingmei was in a daze when she saw a flash of blue light suddenly appear in the dark room. Then he saw that the bullet that was shooting straight stopped suddenly in front of Pei Jun's eyes, as if everything had pressed the pause button. Qingmei's charming eyes widened in horror, looking at the scene in front of her in disbelief. How can it be? What a means! In the extremely frightened and panicked eyes of Qingmei and the other person, Pei Jun casually moved his head. The bullet that was suspended in the air was activated again, passing by Pei Jun, and hit the wooden beam behind Pei Jun with a pop. What was thought to be a fatal attack was easily dodged. Qingmei suddenly felt trembling all over. The room was silent. Who is this young man? Qingmei and the two shouted in great fear and shock. But no one came to answer their doubts at this time, and both of them knew that if they didn't leave, they might not be able to leave either. Qingmei took a deep breath and shouted in horror at the only other person left. Quickly retreat. At the same time, a smoke bomb was thrown directly from his hand, and the room was suddenly enveloped in smoke, blocking all sight lines. The other person took advantage of the cover of the smoke and rushed towards the door beside Pei Jun. Neither of them saw that Pei Jun, who was in the smoke, closed his eyes playfully, and the consciousness in his mind instantly enveloped the entire room. Every move of the two people appeared in Pei Jun's mind very clearly. The man who rushed out the door saw that the door was close at hand, and if he could survive if he rushed out, intense hope ignited in his eyes. But the next second, boom, the figure that rushed out flew back to the room, and Pei Jun slowly retracted his fist. On the other side, Qingmei also took action at the moment her accomplices took action, but instead of rushing out of the door, she rushed directly towards the window on the near side. She knew there was no way to survive at the door. The only way to survive is through this window. Especially when she heard the bombardment coming from the door, the hope in her eyes rose even more. This meant that Pei Jun was still at the door and was being blocked by his accomplices for a moment. This moment was enough for her to escape. Looking at the window in front of her, Qingmei's eyes brightened and she jumped towards the window without hesitation. Hope is just around the corner. Qingmei could already see the trees and flowers outside the window, and a look of happiness on her face showed that she had survived the disaster. But the next moment, the body flying in midair suddenly stopped. Qingmei's expression changed greatly, and she looked down in horror. In the flower bed outside the room, she saw countless dense green vines like long snakes wrapped around her body crazily, making it impossible for her to take another step outside. What's this? Qingmei felt her scalp numb, and just as she was about to pull out the short knife on her thigh to cut off the vines, she saw a crazy tide of vines all around, wrapping around Qingmei's limbs in an instant. In the room, Pei Jun waved his hand to disperse the smoke in the room, and arranged all the tables and chairs that had fallen to the ground during the fight. Then he threw the 3 lifeless dead people into the corner of the room. Just after doing this, there were footsteps outside the door, and then a moment later there was a slight knock on the door. Pei Jun opened the door. I saw a monk clasping his hands and saying, "Amitabha." The young monk just heard a strange noise coming from the dormitory. He was worried about the donor, so he came to take a look. Pei Jun replied with a smile. "Thank you for your concern, master. Maybe something fell when I was just packing up my things." As he spoke, he opened the door so that the monk could see what was going on in the room. The monk did not doubt his presence and politely replied, "As long as the donor has nothing to do, please rest early." "Master, walk slowly." Pei Jun watched the monk leave, then leisurely returned to his room and sat down. The woman tied up outside the window was dragged in by vines and thrown at Pei Jun's feet. Qingmei's look was completely desperate. The woman at his feet was but Pei Jun was unfazed. He knelt down and pulled out the sharp dagger pinned to the woman's black silk thigh. Skillfully holding the knife in his hand, Pei Jun slowly drew the blade across the woman's snow-white skin and said in a cold voice, "The cause and course of the incident." The vines covering the woman's mouth and nose slowly loosened. Qingmei's charming eyes, which she was usually proud of, were now full of fear and anxiety, and she struggled to say, "I don't know anything, ah." Before I finished speaking, I heard a scream. I saw the knife in Pei Jun's hand twist, and the gleaming short knife directly pierced one of Qingmei's palms, and Qingmei suddenly let out a painful scream. "I don't want to hear nonsense." After Pei Jun said calmly, he drew out the short knife, and blood spurted out of his white palm. "The cause and course of the incident?" Pei Jun continued to ask in a cold voice. Qingmei looked at Pei Jun in horror, her panicked voice mixed with severe pain. "You can't kill me, I'm..." The cold light flashed again. "Ah!" Qingmei screamed in pain, and her white and tender arms were filled with blood. The blood-red knife edge continued to stimulate her nerves, causing her normally exquisite facial features to all twist together due to pain. Pei Jun slowly drew out the bloody dagger and slowly scratched Qingmei's skin. Unparalleled panic penetrated her soul. Qingmei's emotions completely collapsed and she shouted in horror. I said, we are collecting antiquities that produce visions all over the world. We learned about you from a stall owner, so we prepared to come, recover antiquities. Qing Mei said intermittently with a painful tone. Hearing Qing Mei's words, Pei Jun's indifferent eyes flashed. Has anyone taken action yet? Pei Jun noticed another word in Qing Mei's words and raised his eyebrows slightly. Stall owner. Surname Wu. Qing Mei nodded quickly. Yes. Pei Jun continued to ask. Where are the people? Qing Mei paused for a moment, then said with a pale face. Died. Pei Jun's expression darkened. According to the development trajectory of his previous life, Wu Stallmaster should rise in the revival of mythology, and eventually become the famous Wu Zhenren in Longhu Mountain, with a cultivation level as high as that of land gods. Rather than die at this time, especially in such an anonymous way. Could it be that the future has changed because of his butterfly? Pei Jun did not have any emotions because of the death of stall owner Wu. He had seen too many dead people in the dark life of more than 10 years in his previous life. Death is insignificant, but this incident reminded him that the future cannot be static. Qing Mei saw that Pei Jun's expression darkened, and she panicked, thinking that she was finished. Unexpectedly, Pei Jun's expression returned to calm in an instant, and she continued to ask. Who are you? Qing Mei's breath was stagnant and she didn't answer immediately. A cold light flashed in Pei Jun's hand, and the blade was about to cut through the skin. Qing Mei quickly shouted. One creature. All of us are following the arrangements of Tai creatures and collecting antiquities. Hearing this, Pei Jun raised his eyebrows. He is no stranger to Tai creatures, and can even be said to be familiar with them. This is one of the 5 major hegemons in the world that is independent of all officials and countries in the previous life, with influence all over the world. A behemoth in the true sense. Unexpectedly, it was behind this group of people. No wonder that after the resurgence of the myth of the previous life, the Tai creature quickly rose to prominence and became a dominant force in just a few years. It turns out that the layout had already begun before Shinwa's revival. Pei Jun recalled the memories of his past life, and the confusion and doubts in his heart were slowly solved. I am afraid that other large forces that rose rapidly in the early stages of the previous life have more or less begun to make plans and actions at this time. See the whole thing at a glance. Pei Jun was not surprised by this. After all, there are so many smart and lucky people in the world, and he, who has lived through 2 lives, can at best be considered one of them. Pei Jun continued to ask. Your name? Qing Mei. Where is your headquarters? I only know that we are not in China. We all follow the arrangements of the Hangzhou branch. The questions and answers in the room continued for a while. It wasn't until Pei Jun squeezed out the last bit of information Qing Mei knew that he stopped. Seemingly sensing the murderous intent in Pei Jun's eyes, Qing Mei struggled desperately and said. You can't kill me, the Tai creature won't let you go. Pei Jun's expression was still cold. Qing Mei's expression became more and more desperate, and she tried her best to beg. I'm still valuable. I can give you my money and my body. Let me go. Looking at the pleading woman in front of him, Pei Jun felt no emotion in his heart. He raised the knife and dropped it, and the woman's pleading stopped abruptly. The moment the woman fired the shot, her fate was sealed. Having experienced the darkness in his previous life, he has never shown mercy to any enemy. Pei Jun casually put away the pistol and dagger on the woman's body, and dragged the lifeless woman on the ground to the corner of the room. 4 bodies were stacked on top of each other. Pei Jun stared at the 4 corpses in the corner of the room and murmured with cold eyes. One creature. The next day, before dawn, Pei Jun cleared the 4 corpses from the room into the primeval forest of Tianmu Mountain. Then he cleaned up the room where he had lived for more than half a month, and finally left the temple despite the abbot's efforts to persuade him to stay. Although he is not afraid of Tai creatures, he does not want to get into too much trouble before Shinwa is revived. Especially now that order has not collapsed, and the behemoth state is still monitoring the world all the time. So he planned to change his residence. On the way down the mountain, Pei Jun was driving when his cell phone rang suddenly. Pei Jun looked at the caller in surprise and answered the call. Hello, monitor. The monitor on the other end of the phone asked tentatively. Jun Pei, it's me. After confirming his identity, the squad leader laughed heartily. Did you just wake up? No, I've been awake for a while. The monitor continued to smile. I saw that you didn't reply to my message last night, so I called you specifically to inform you. Our class reunion is scheduled for July 15th. I've sent you the location on my mobile phone. Don't miss the date then. Hearing this, Pei Jun raised his eyebrows. No problem. We haven't seen each other for 3 years. I must have a good drink then. Sure. The two hung up the phone while chatting and laughing. The smile on Pei Jun's face fell. The phone hovered on his fingertips, thinking about the class reunion. July 15th. That means there are still 15 days to prepare. The class reunion is related to the last treasure in his early plan, which is also the treasure that he is bound to get, and this time he will also enter the extremely dangerous dimension fragment. He must prepare before this happens. The door roared under Pei Jun's feet, and the car drove quickly into the distance. In a certain base in Hangzhou, countless personnel with serious expressions or desolate looks were walking through the hall, and occasionally 1 or 2 researchers wearing white research uniforms were seen. 4 cold white words are engraved on the wall of the base: Tai creatures. Captain 2. Many people in the hall stopped and shouted. 2U, wearing a black uniform and coat, walked through the hall with a stern expression and walked outside the base. 2U frowned and looked into the distance, then lit a cigarette, as if waiting for something. After a while, the phone rang. 2U picked up the phone with a serious expression. Wu Da, is there any news? A dull voice on the other end of the phone said. Captain, there is no news yet. Qingmei and the 4 of them have completely lost contact. When 2U heard this, his expression darkened. There has been no news from Qingmei and others, which gave him a bad feeling. 2U frowned and asked. Where were the last 4 of them? Wu Da replied in a deep voice. Tianmu Mountain, Lion Zongzong Zen Temple. According to Qingmei's last news, she found the residence of the fat sheep yesterday, and several people went to search for the target last night. Then there was no news. 2U looked stern, put out the cigarette in his hand, and said with fierce eyes. Let's go, take the people to meet at Tianmu Mountain. And all the information about that fat sheep, send it to me. After saying that, he quickly walked out of the base and drove towards Tianmu Mountain. On the other side, Pei Ju, who had already gone down the mountain, did not return directly to Hangzhou, but walked around the foot of Tianmu Mountain a few times. He was going to change his residence. Now the temple is temporarily uninhabitable. The rental house is located in the city, and the spiritual energy is scarce. Pei Jun has already given up on it. So I could only find a new place, but Pei Jun was not ready to leave Tianmu Mountain. Whether it is the higher concentration of spiritual energy in Tianmu Mountain now, or the several great cave heavens and paradises that will be born on Tianmu Mountain in the future, these are his key goals in the later stage. He won't let go easily. So after going down the mountain, Pei Jun walked around the foothills of Tianmu Mountain several times. He really found a good place. In front of you is a high-end villa. Away from the main road in the center, with the foothills of East Tianmu Mountain at its back, the environment is very quiet. Moreover, the security measures in this villa area are also very good. Although some abnormal incidents cannot be solved, it is still easy to avoid some troubles. Moreover, the villa area is backed by East Tianmu Mountain, so you can observe the situation of Tianmu Mountain at any time. In addition, if an accident occurs, you can also sneak into the primeval forest of East Tianmu Mountain at any time. Can defend or retreat. Good. That's it. Pei Jun quickly made a decision in his mind and went straight to the house sales center. What makes Pei Jun a little surprised is that buying a house in this villa area requires a capital verification. Fortunately, Pei Jun still has 30 million in his card, which is enough. After verifying the capital, Pei Jun selected a single-family well-decorated villa closest to Tianmu Mountain under the eager eyes of the beautiful saleswoman. Do you want full payment or a loan? Loan. Definitely choose a loan. After all, there is only 1 month left before Shinwa's recovery, and in 1 month all real estate companies will be GG. You don't have to pay off the rest of the mortgage. And just when Pei Jun was going through the house handover procedures, Tianmu Mountain on the other side. 2U and others who came out of Tai Biological Base had already sneaked into the dormitory where Pei Jun once lived. The room in front of me was completely clean. Did Qingmei and the others not come? Looking at the clean room, the sturdy Wu Da frowned and said. Tu Yu glanced at every corner of the room with a serious expression, then shook his head solemnly and said, "Here they come." Although the finisher's work is very meticulous, it cannot escape his eyes. And he did it. As he spoke, Tu Yu looked at a certain wall of the room with a solemn expression. I saw that the wall in front of me was dented on all sides, and there were a lot of debris accumulated in the corners where the wall was vertical to the ground, as if it had been impacted by a heavy object. And Tu Yu's eyes narrowed and he bent over. Seeing that the floor of the dormitory was paved with bricks and stones, Tu Yu reached out and gently wiped a gap between the bricks and stones, then raised his hand and smelled it. The smell of blood. Tu Yu's heart sank. He was afraid something might have happened to Qingmei and the others. Wu Da beside him frowned and said, "Who did they attack?" "According to the information we have obtained, this fat sheep is just an ordinary person. It is impossible for him to have any resistance against Qingmei and the others. Could they be from other organizations? In addition to us, there is also Yongsheng Technology in Hangzhou who is also taking action. Or is it official?" As he said that, Wu Da's expression darkened. If the official took action, the situation would not be good. Wu Da had even begun to look around cautiously. Tu Yu, who had been thinking all the time, shook his head. It won't be official. This task was originally a temporary one, the information would not be leaked, and Qingmei and the others would definitely take the initiative to avoid the authorities, so there would be no possibility of a direct conflict. And according to the news they received when they first arrived, the fat sheep living in this room had just moved out this morning. What a coincidence. This matter must be related to this fat sheep. Tu Yu examined every detail of the room and said slowly, "I'm afraid we underestimated this fat sheep. Maybe it's a wolf in sheep's clothing." After Tu Yu finished speaking, he snorted coldly and said with stern eyes, "Use all your hands to find this fat sheep. The person who killed me was a wolf, and I will take off this wolf skin for him." It was getting dark. After finishing the house, Pei Jun drove to Nanshan Road. Now that the revival of Xinhua is imminent, he has now been promoted to extraordinary, his strength has skyrocketed, and he has been unable to carry out plans and layouts before. It's time to start. The river in the night was glowing with the moonlight, reflecting the ecstasy and feasting on the shore. Heaven and Earth, the famous gold-selling cave in Hangzhou. When Pei Jun got out of the car, several bartenders in suits came up to the door and asked eagerly, "Does the boss have a reservation?" Pei Jun said calmly, "I'm looking for Shen Ruo." After Pei Jun finished speaking, several bartenders looked blank. "Boss, are you looking for the guests tonight?" Seeing the doubts of the bartenders, Pei Jun raised his eyebrows, then thought about it and changed his name. "Look for Sister Hong." At this time, Shen Ruo should not be acting under his real name. Sure enough, after finishing speaking this time, several bartenders looked confused, but they looked at Pei Jun carefully and asked, "Do you have an appointment?" "No." After the words fell, the eyes of several bartenders became colder, and they politely refused. "Excuse me." Pei Jun waved his hand and interrupted the bartender. "Tell her that I have news about Shen Lin." The bartenders looked at each other suspiciously, but looking at Pei Jun's calm look, they still announced on the intercom. Not long after, someone hurried over and said to Mr. Pei very respectfully, "Are you looking for Sister Hong? You come with me." The two entered the world of heaven and earth, leaving only a few bartenders behind them looking at each other in confusion and surprise. "Who is this young man? Who is this young man?" "You know, the person who just ran out in a hurry is not an ordinary person, but the general manager in heaven and earth, and the #1 celebrity around Sister Hong. You actually have so much respect for this young man. Moreover, Sister Hong, as the boss behind heaven and earth, is rarely seen by ordinary people. Even if she meets, she usually needs to make an appointment very early. They have never seen anyone see Sister Hong directly without making an appointment. That's why the bartenders were so surprised. I can't understand it at all." Pei Jun didn't know what kind of waves the scene just caused in the hearts of several bartenders. At this time, he was following the guide in front of him into the heaven and earth. His consciousness expanded, and the luxurious scenes in the countless boxes around him were all revealed in his mind. Pei Jun quickly eliminated the danger. Security is pretty good. And guns. It is indeed the #1 gold-selling cave in Hangzhou. But it should be no problem to penetrate it. The thought passed by in a flash, and Pei Jun followed the guide through the lavish private rooms and crazy-looking people, and arrived at the last private room. Two burly men were guarding outside the box. When they saw the two approaching, they glanced at Pei Jun with sharp eyes. The guide knocked on the door, and the door of the private room opened automatically, and restless music and flashing lights rushed in from inside. Pei Jun followed calmly into the box. There is a woman sitting in the middle of the box. The woman has gorgeous makeup and a voluptuous figure. Especially the low-cut red dress makes her look even more charming, with the waves on her chest rising and falling with the woman's every move. It was Pei Jun who wanted to find the person, Shen Ruo. As for the men sitting next to them, they were either tough or fierce, with vague murderous intent in their eyes. They should all be Shen Ruo's bodyguards or thugs. Pei Jun quickly took in the situation in the box. As Mr. Pei entered, the men sitting in the box all looked at Mr. Pei nonchalantly. Their eyes revealed alertness and vigilance, as if they would take action at the slightest sign of trouble. Shen Ruo, who was leaning on the sofa, spoke, her red lips parted slightly, and her hoarse voice sounded. "Do you know Shen Lin?" Pei Jun casually pulled out a chair and sat down, then chuckled. "Have no idea. Why did I get here?" Pei Jun looked at Shen Ruo frivolously. Shen Ruo picked up the lighter and lit a cigarette, puffed out the smoke with blurred eyes, then looked at Pei Jun and said unhurriedly. "In your hands. How come?" Pei Jun laughed and shook his head. "Where is he?" Shen Ruo leaned forward, the waves in front of him became more conspicuous, and the large fair skin was even a bit dazzling. At this time, Lu Mei frowned slightly and asked. Pei Jun ignored the beautiful scenery on Shen Ruo's chest, just looked at Shen Ruo with a smile, and quietly did not answer. Shen Ruo sat upright, smoking a cigarette, and his tone became colder. "What would you like? Money, power, women?" Shen Ruoliu raised his eyebrows lightly, and there was a hint of arrogance in his faint tone, as if as long as Pei Jun nodded, everything could be given to him. As the boss behind heaven and earth, she does have the confidence to say this. However, Pei Jun shook his head. Shen Ruo frowned, his eyes were slightly unkind, and he said in a cold tone. "Then what do you want?" "I want." Pei Jun smiled and looked directly at Shen Ruo wildly. "You." As soon as Pei Jun finished speaking, the sound of tables and chairs was heard all around. The people who were sitting loosely around all stood up quickly, reached for their waists, and looked at Pei Jun who was sitting there indifferently with unkind eyes. It seems that if Mr. Pei makes any move next, they will take action immediately. Pei Jun looked at the beauty in front of him calmly. In the more than 10 years since the myth of the previous life was revived, many amazing and talented people have emerged who shocked the past and the present. The witch Shen Ruo is one of them. She rose in Hangzhou and became famous in the era of myth resurgence. Because of her ruthless behavior and enchanting figure, she is called a witch. Legend has it that Shen Ruo is extremely talented, has inherited ancient magic skills, and has amazing strength. After the revival of the myth came, Shen Ruo relied on his amazing skills to quickly control the underground forces in the entire Hangzhou city and even the entire southeast region. Become the well-deserved queen of the underground. It can be said that this is a woman with extraordinary means and strength. If it were normal, Pei Jun would naturally not dare to set his sights on such a woman. But everyone has weaknesses. Pei Jun, who has returned from rebirth, naturally knows what Shen Ruo's weakness is. That's her brother, Shen Lin. Shen Ruo's parents died young, and he has been dependent on his younger brother who is 1 year older than him since childhood. But when the two were 10 years old, they encountered human traffickers. The younger brother tried his best to let Shen Ruo escape, but he was captured by the traffickers. Shen Ruo has been looking for it for many years, and even found the era of myth resurgence. In the 5th year of the revival of the myth, Shen Ruokai, who had become the underground queen of the southeast at that time, offered a shocking reward. Use yourself as the bounty, and use top-notch skills and spiritual treasures as partners. Looking for a younger brother all over the country. Top-notch skills and spiritual treasures that are rare in the world. Plus a top-notch beauty. Everything stimulates people's nerves, so everyone goes crazy. At that time, Pei Jun naturally dreamed of having a beautiful woman in his arms and longed for top-notch cultivation techniques and spiritual treasures. Naturally, he also participated in this operation. So the memory is profound. The final result is nothing. The next time I heard about this incident, it was already the 7th year of Shinwa. At that time, the war between humans and monsters had just begun. Pei Jun heard that Shen Ruo had found someone. But it was a corpse. Shen Ruo's younger brother died in Shiwanda Mountain. The crazy Shen Ruoran risked his life, single-handedly rushed into the Shiwan Mountain and slaughtered tens of thousands of demons. It directly postponed the fight between human beings and monsters for a year. Eventually he died. It can be said that this is a man who has been searching for his younger brother all his life. Later, Pei Jun heard that Shen Ruo's younger brother had been abducted and trafficked to a mountain village in Yunling City in his early years. Later, the myth revived, and Yunling City underwent earth-shaking changes. Hundreds of thousands of mountains separated the entire Yunling from the Wa Kingdom. Become a paradise for monsters. Shen Ruo's younger brother fell deeply into it and eventually died. After experiencing everything in his previous life, Pei Jun naturally knew how much Shen Ruo valued Shen Lin, so he set his sights on Shen Ruo. If we can capture Shen Ruo and the entire force behind Shen Ruo, this is definitely a huge help to Pei Jun. This is also one of the key layouts after his rebirth. So after breaking through the realm, he came. Pei Jun looked at the beauty in front of him calmly, as if everything around him was not a threat. After hearing what Pei Jun said, Shen Ruo's expression did not change much, but his eyes became colder and he asked in a cold tone. Is there any other way? There was a hint of threat in his words. You can try. Pei Jun's expression did not change and he smiled lightly. Shen Ruo took a deep breath of cigarette, and the light and dark flickers of the burning tobacco reflected her increasingly cold and cruel eyes. Seeing that there was nothing left to talk about, she was not going to waste any time and just changed to a simpler and more crude method. Take down Pei Jun. Although she was puzzled by Pei Jun's indifference, she was on her territory and there were 4 bodyguards in the room whom she had paid a lot of money to hire. She thought that nothing would go wrong. So, Shen Ruo spoke. Get him. A hoarse voice sounded, and the bodyguards who had already been on alert all around immediately moved and quickly moved towards Pei Jun's location. Several people in the room were bodyguards hired by Shen Ruo at a high price. They also served as thugs on weekdays and often helped her solve some unforgettable matters. There are ruthless mercenaries who have gone abroad, ruthless killers who work for others, and top soldiers who have retired from the mysterious army. All of them are so powerful that ordinary people can't survive a single round against them. If you put them outside, they are all independent beings. They have seen blood on their hands and killed people. After all, there are too many people who want her life. Shen Ruo looked at Pei Jun with a cold expression. In her eyes, the same was true for this young man who came uninvited and spoke arrogantly. If you want her life, you have to see if you have the strength. The neon lights in the room flickered and danced, and the people around him all took action, attacking Pei Jun fiercely. A flash of cold light suddenly came from behind in the darkness. There was a sneer on Pei Jun's lips. As soon as he entered the box, his consciousness was fully activated, and the mysterious assassination method was nothing more than a child's joke to his consciousness. Pei Jun suddenly raised his head and slashed the air with a cold light. Pei Jun exerted his strength on his legs, and the chair under him suddenly swung, and his single leg was like a stick, sweeping through the darkness behind him in an instant. With a painful groan, a ghostly figure flew out of the darkness with Pei Jun's leg and hit the wall of the box heavily. A sharp sound of breaking through the air came from behind. Pei Jun jumped up from the chair. Behind him, he saw a strong man with a body as strong as a bear, and his eyes were fierce and he hit Pei Jun on the head. Pei Jun raised his eyebrows. A competition of strength. He likes visualizing the setting sun and the hanging drum visualization picture every day. His physical quality is getting closer and closer to the Vajra glazed body. Now that he has practiced the Vajra indestructible magic art, his power has already become an inhuman existence. He just wanted to test how strong he is now. I saw a sinister smile hanging from the corner of Pei Jun's lips, raising his hand to draw the bow. His muscles all over his body suddenly accumulated strength, and he hit the fist of the sturdy man with a punch without any skill. The sturdy man who came was also grinning, with a ferocious smile on his face. He was born with great strength, and no one around him could match him. Even the several bodyguards with similar strength around him did not dare to fight hard with him. Fight for strength. Unexpectedly, the pretty boy in front of him dared to confront him head-on. Pei Jun, who is handsome and 1.8 meters tall, is automatically classified as a pretty boy by the tough guy who is over 2 meters tall. Seeing Pei Jun's punch, the sturdy man laughed wildly. He could already imagine the situation of blowing up the pretty face in front of him with one punch. I simply don't know how high the sky is. The sturdy man roared angrily and pumped his fist. Go to hell. The other people who were attacking stopped one after another. No one knew better than them how powerful this stupid bear was. Even they did not dare to fight head-on with this stupid bear. Shen Ruo leaned on the sofa with her legs crossed, her white and tender legs looming under the red skirt. At this moment, Shen Ruo's eyes flashed with a hint of amusement. She thought that the person coming was a person, but she didn't expect that it turned out to be an idiot. What a waste of her testing. Under everyone's gaze, the two parties' incomparable fists fiercely clashed together. Boom! A deafening roar suddenly sounded, and a large air wave was set off in the box. The expected situation did not appear. In the flashing lights, everyone saw a strong figure flying backwards. Tables and chairs fell over. Ah! The strong man flew backwards and fell hard to the ground. At this time, the eyes of the strong man were red, and he let out a fierce and painful wail. I saw that the arms of the sturdy man, which were as thick as ordinary human thighs, were hanging limply on the ground. In the flickering lights, you could see the bloody bones piercing the skin and exposing them to the air. The tragic scene made everyone's eyes widen. Shen Ruo, who was leaning calmly on the sofa, sat up straight in shock and looked at Pei Jun in the field with fear and suspicion. Pei Jun's eyes were playful and he moved his fist slightly. If he hadn't stopped halfway just now, I'm afraid what everyone would have seen was a pile of minced meat. The remaining people all looked solemn at this time, and their eyes no longer held the previous contempt. One of them, a man with a short hair and a figure as fierce as a soldier, shouted in a low voice. We have lots of ideas, let's work together. With that said, the remaining people rushed forward. The neon lights in the box flickered more and more, and the music played happened to switch to a high-pitched and exciting rock song. Several people took action together. The cold light is biting and the fists and feet are roaring. In an instant, I heard only the fierce sound of drums mixed with the fierce banging sound of fighting. Then I saw a figure flying upside down. The box was in a mess. The people who had attacked before were all injured and fell to the ground, either unconscious or wailing in pain. Pei Jun was the only one left standing in the box. Bang! 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 Violent gunshots suddenly rang out. It turned out that Shen Ruo saw all the people who had taken action fall to the ground. Without hesitation, he pulled out the pistol on his thigh and fired several shots directly at Pei Jun. Be decisive. Don't give Mr. Pei any time to react. Ding! A clear bell rang. The exciting music in the box stopped abruptly, the flashing lights stopped for a moment, and the bullets flying toward Pei Jun hung in the air abruptly. Shen Ruo looked at Pei Jun in shock, with disbelief in his beautiful eyes. How can it be? Shen Ruo shouted in horror. From being a helpless orphan to being the boss behind a nightclub, occupying half of the underground power in Hangzhou, what kind of people has she not seen along the way? She has probably seen and heard of strange people and strange things more than ordinary people have eaten, but Shen Ruo has never seen or even heard of the terrifying methods in front of her. It actually made the bullet hover. Wrong. Not only the bullets, but the entire box was at a standstill. Because she found that she couldn't move at all and could only maintain the posture of holding the gun in one hand. Then Shen Ruo saw Pei Jun looking at her playfully, easily dodged the bullet hanging in front of him, and then walked towards her step by step. The slight footsteps were like drums beating on her chest, and deep fear and panic appeared in Shen Ruo's beautiful eyes. Except for the time when she fell into the hands of human traffickers, Shen Ruo had never been so helpless and helpless as before, like fish on the chopping board. Let others slaughter you. Pei Jun chuckled and walked to Shen Ruo's side, casually removed the pistol from her hand, and sat down next to Shen Ruo. With a wave of his hand, the box returned to normal again. The intense music sounded again, the flashing neon lights continued to fly, and several bullets hanging in the air were instantly shot at the door of the box. Pei Jun turned his head and looked at Shen Ruo, who was very close at hand, and said with a chuckle, "How do you feel about what you said to me?" What greeted Pei Jun was a sharp elbow strike. Pei Jun casually waved away the incoming elbow strike, and then grabbed Shen Ruo by his neck. "Uh-huh." Shen Ruomei's eyes widened in horror, a suffocating sound came from her tightly choked throat, and her delicate face gradually turned red. Pei Jun said calmly, "Isn't your plan for so many years just to find your brother?" The look in Shen Ruo's eyes became even more panicked. "I told you, I know where he is." Pei Jun stared at Shen Ruo's panicked beautiful eyes with burning eyes, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Become my man. I'll tell you the answer." Shen Ruo's face was already a little blue, but there was no mercy in Pei Jun's eyes. The more proud a person was, the more he would crush the pride in her heart. Shen Ruo's breathing became weaker and weaker, and he was almost done. Pei Jun took Shen Ruo's cell phone on the table with his other hand, scanned Shen Ruo's face to decode it, and then opened the phone page. "Quickly enter a number and save. This is my phone number. Think about it and give me a call." Pei Jun whispered in Shen Ruo's ear, then chuckled and released the palm that was tightly holding Shen Ruo's neck. Shen Ruo's body suddenly twitched, and he opened his mouth wide and took a deep breath of air, like a person who had been drowning for a long time, greedily breathing in the long-lost air. The purple complexion gradually faded away, and she slowly returned to her former beauty. By the time Shen Ruo's condition recovered, Pei Jun had already walked out of the box, leaving only a mess on the floor in the box. Shen Ruo looked at the mess on the ground with a complicated expression. Everything that happened today had somewhat subverted her long-held view of the world. As if thinking of something, Shen Ruo hesitantly opened the phone on the table, and sure enough he saw an extra phone number on the phone page. Note: owner. Shen Ruo's face was livid, and the fingers holding the phone were trembling. The undulating chest kept fluctuating with her violent breathing, and a flash of extreme anger rose in Shen Ruo's eyes. Ever since she had power and money in her hands, she had never been so humiliated. He raised his hand tremblingly and wanted to smash the phone out, but as soon as he waved his hand, Shen Ruo stopped with a pale face. Pei Jun's chuckled words still echoed in her ears. "Isn't your plan for so many years just to find your brother?" Yes, her layout over the years, she has spent all her efforts to get to where she is today, just to find Adi. And when she thought of Pei Jun's mystery and power, Shen Ruo felt a sense of helpless panic in her heart. She never told anyone that everything she did was to find her brother. Everyone thought that Shen Ruo was just an ambitious woman who was greedy for money and power, but little did they know. But today, Pei Jun clearly revealed the secret that had been buried in her heart for more than 10 years. And thinking of the previous battle in the box, Shen Ruo took a few deep breaths of air conditioning. What just happened was simply not something human power could do. Mysterious, scary, and domineering. Who is he? In the end, Shen Ruo suppressed the urge to throw the phone in his heart and lowered his hand with a sad expression. On the other side, Pei Jun walked out of the heaven and earth with a calm expression, as if he had just gone to the box to chat for a while. Then he took the key from the admiring bartender and drove away from the heaven and earth. He never thought that he could take down Shen Ruo in one go. This is a smart and proud woman. What he has to do is to slowly wear away the pride in her heart and destroy her belief. Only in this way will you be able to use it easily in the future. As for whether Shen Ruo would call him, Pei Jun is not worried. Although everything just now seemed that Shen Ruo was not that eager. But after experiencing everything in his previous life and witnessing Shen Ruo's madness to find his younger brother, he knew better than anyone else the status of Shen Lin in Shen Ruo's heart. How could a person who was willing to die for his brother give up the hope in front of him? A sneer flashed across the corner of Pei Jun's mouth. Don't blame him for being despicable and shameless in taking advantage of people's hearts, blame him only for the darkness of this coming world. Pei Jun roared with the accelerator under his feet and quickly returned to the villa. 3 days later, in Lin's hometown, Pei Jun had just finished training for the day and was slowly finishing his work. I just heard Mr. Lin lying on the recliner nearby and said with a complicated expression. Your martial arts talent is the highest I have ever seen. It took others more than 10 years to master it in less than half a month. Now you have learned all the 10 major shapes except the dragon, tiger, bear, and eagle. It's a pity that tigers, real bears, and falcons are rarely seen on Earth today. The wild beasts kept in zoos have long lost their former ambitions, and it's useless to watch them. As for the legendary real dragon, it is even more illusory and illusory. It only exists in myths and legends. I am not very proficient in these 4 forms, so I can't teach you. Otherwise, with your talent, your future achievements may surpass those of the founder of Liuhe Xinyi Quan, Mr. Liu. What a pity. What a pity. Mr. Lin sighed with a sad expression. Pei Jun's expression on the side remained unchanged, even a little strange. Because he knows that in the next few years, there will be more and more wild beasts such as tigers, real bears, and falcons in the world, and countless beasts that have awakened their ancestral bloodline will even become more ferocious and terrifying. Even real dragons that once only existed in myths and legends will be born. Perhaps this is also the reason why Mr. Lin was able to rise quickly after the revival of the myth in his previous life and occupy a place in the revival of the myth. Pei Jun packed up his things and stopped when he was about to leave and said, "Mr. Lin, how about I help you reopen the martial arts gym?" This is the thought that came to Pei Jun's mind during the past few days of practice. In addition to practicing these days, he also chatted with Mr. Lin and Lin Nuo and learned that Mr. Lin once opened a martial arts gym. However, because his son and daughter-in-law died one after another that year, the martial arts school that he had no time to manage naturally closed down. This also became a thought in Mr. Lin's mind. And according to the historical trend of the previous life, when the mythology revives, Mr. Lin himself will reopen the martial arts gym and recruit many disciples. And it will become the famous Liuhe martial arts school in the future. Although it has not reached the top level of the 5 overlords in the previous life and spanned the world, it is still one of the top large forces in South China. If you can control it, it will be a rare help. Having witnessed the confrontation between the major forces in his previous life, Pei Jun knew that if he wanted to reach the top, he could not do it alone. So he deliberately started to make plans and gather forces. Only with enough help in his hands can he pursue higher strength without distraction. Shen Rui. So does Mr. Lin. After hearing what Mr. Pei said, Mr. Lin fell into deep thought and stopped holding the cattail leaf fan in his hand. Reopening the martial arts gym. Mr. Lin murmured. There seemed to be a light flashing in Mr. Hun's eyes, but it passed quickly. Mr. Lin finally shook his head. How can I teach anyone with my old bones? Pei Jun is not in a hurry. When the myth comes back to life, even the old bones can be rejuvenated. He has seen people crawl out of the tomb. Moreover, he had begun to deliberately use Ling Qi to strengthen Elder Lin's physical condition in the past 2 days. So Pei Jun said, "You think about it first." With that said, he left Mr. Lin's home. The sky had turned dark. Pei Jun drove back to his villa located at the foot of Tianmu Mountain. The phone rang on the way. Pei Jun glanced at the notes and a smile appeared on his face. The call note shows, Shen Ruo, Heaven and Earth. It was still the box where Mr. Pei came, but it was unusually quiet at this time, and Shen Ruo was the only one. Shen Ruo was still wearing a low-cut red skirt, sitting on the sofa with her legs crossed, looking at all the information in front of her with a complicated expression. In the past 3 days, she used all the power in her hands to turn over all the information on Pei Jun. His parents' situation, his schooling and work experience, and even his relationship experience were all found out clearly by Shen Ruo. But, after reading the collected information, Shen Ruo became even more surprised and suspicious. Because the person shown in the information is just an ordinary migrant worker, nothing special about him. This was not the person she saw that day at all. Everything about that day is still clearly engraved in her mind. Shen Ruo can't combine the ordinary person in the information with the mysterious and terrifying man that day. Is all the information false? But according to the strength in her hands, even if she wants to find out the information about the mayor of Hangzhou City, she can dig it out for him. Moreover, Shen Ruo also found countless strange people and strange things in the past 3 days, but no one could explain the methods that Pei Jun showed that day. Especially dodge bullets and make time stand still. Shen Ruo also asked several bodyguards that day afterwards, and they all looked horrified and told Shen Ruo not to be enemies with them. No one can compete with it. So for the past few days, Shenruo has been in a state of confusion, and fear. His face looked very haggard. But she knew that she couldn't delay it any longer. The hope she had been looking for more than 10 years was right in front of her, and she couldn't just watch the hope dissipate. And she didn't dare to bet. She had personally experienced Pei Jun's cold-bloodedness and domineering that day, and she was afraid that if Pei Jun lost his patience. So after procrastinating for 3 days, tonight Shenruo finally made up her mind and made the call that she didn't want to touch. The call was answered quickly. Shenruo was silent for a few seconds, and finally spoke in a low voice. Hello. There was a chuckle from the other end of the phone, followed by a frivolous and cold voice. What should you call me? Shenruo's breathing was stagnant and he bit his lips. The hand holding the phone was trembling. After Shenruo was silent for a long time, he finally shouted sadly. Owner. After shouting, Shenruo seemed to have been drained of energy and his expression was gloomy. In the car, when he heard the shouting from the other end of the phone, the corners of Pei Jun's lips raised, and that was about it. So Pei Jun spoke. Your brother's location is in Yunling City. Just as he said a word, a large dazzling light suddenly came from the night in front of Pei Jun. The light penetrated the darkness and shot straight at Pei Jun. Pei Jun was so blinded by the sudden light that he couldn't open his eyes. He suddenly stepped on the brakes, and the consciousness in his mind spread out instantly. In the dazzling light, a group of fierce figures were running towards him, with murderous intent. Black uniform coat. The familiar clothes suddenly came back to Pei Jun's mind. Pei Jun's expression turned cold, and the murderous intent in his eyes skyrocketed. One creature. Pei Jun hung up the phone casually. Wait until I kill someone. On the other end of the phone, Shenruo wanted to know his brother's location at the first sight. Unexpectedly, Pei Jun suddenly hung up the phone with a shocked expression. There was only a busy tone on the other end of the phone. Shenruo looked at the phone in his hand in panic and anger, wondering what Pei Jun meant. Waiting for him to kill someone. Is he fighting someone? Or is it that he was playing tricks on himself from beginning to end? Shenruo gritted her teeth, suddenly remembered something, and quickly stood up and walked out of the box. High heels clicked in the aisle. Shenruo quickly found the manager who brought Pei Jun in that day and asked aloud. Have you been sending people to keep an eye on Mr. Pei these past few days? Yes. The manager looked at Shenruo who looked anxious and nodded quickly. Find his current location, contact Jazi and ask him to bring a group of action personnel and rush over immediately. Shenruo gave the order resolutely, and then stretched out his hand. Key. The manager quickly took out the car key from his pocket and handed it to Shenruo respectfully. Shenruo picked up the key and walked out. Everywhere they passed, there were respectful shouts. Hello, Sister Hong. Hello, Sister Hong. This is Shenruo, the boss behind the scenes in Heaven and Earth, half of the underground forces in Hangzhou. On the other side, Pei Jun's battle has begun. After hanging up the phone, Pei Jun had a cold smile on his lips, got out of the car and charged towards the incoming team single-handedly. It just so happens that today's martial arts training begins. Now let's test the results. Tu Yu, who took the lead in the attack, looked at Pei Jun who was not panicking and even rushed towards him, and snorted coldly. He is indeed a wolf in sheep's clothing. Take him down and keep him alive. With an order, everyone around them accelerated their forward speed, and it was here in an instant. Crack! The long sword was unsheathed, and the sharp cold light struck at Pei Jun's arms. Pei Jun raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth, and his steps changed. His speed suddenly increased, and there was even a faint sound of horses whistling around him. The 10 major shapes of the mind. Horse shape. The fierce horse sings in the wind. The sharp cold light missed the target, and before the attacker could react, Pei Jun had already struck the attacker's arm with one hand like a knife. There was a clearly audible snap. The attacker's arm was instantly broken, and the long knife slipped from his hand. Pei Jun took advantage of the situation and took the slipping long knife. The sharp blade reflected Pei Jun's murderous eyes, and he stabbed the knife into the chest of the person next to him with his backhand. Clean. Cruel. No sloppiness. The fight happened in an instant, and all the movement around him stopped. Pei Jun pulled out the bloody long knife, held the knife in one hand, and looked at the people around him with a ferocious smile. Tu Yu looked at Pei Jun in front of him with fierce eyes. He had seen everything in his eyes at the moment of the fight, and naturally recognized Pei Jun's moves. The mind is in harmony. Martial arts master. So that's the case, no wonder he was able to deal with Qing Mei and the others, and even faced them without fear. The doubts in Tu Yu's heart suddenly became clear. However, many martial arts masters died in his hands. The other attackers were also aware of Pei Jun's strength, but there was no fear or flinch in their eyes, just as Tu Yu thought. Many martial arts masters died in their hands. So everyone just froze for a moment, and then violently attacked Pei Jun's position again, and the dazzling lights in the distance were turned off. The world fell into darkness. The assailant blended vaguely with the darkness. Pei Jun sneered, "This method is really weak." The consciousness in his mind expanded instantly, and every move within a 10-meter radius appeared clearly in his mind. With a backhand slash, he slashed across the neck of the attacker behind him, and blood splattered in the darkness. The next second, attacks came from all around, and painful wails were heard from time to time amidst the clashing sounds of swords. The cold light in Pei Jun's hand was like a swallow, and every time it flew, it brought out a bloody light. Until a sharp whistling sound came from behind his head, and in Pei Jun's consciousness, he saw a fierce attacker suddenly leaping out from the crowd, and slashing towards him with a broad black knife in his hand. The black knife slashed down and set off a biting cold wind. Tu Yu exploded with all his strength and slashed at Pei Jun with a fierce expression. Pei Jun raised his brows and used his sword to deal with the entangled person in front of him, then turned around and raised his sword to block. The moment the two knives struck each other, the long knife in Pei Jun's hand made a crisp buzzing sound, and then he saw the long knife split into two and broke from the middle. Tu Yu had a ferocious smile on his face and kept the black knife in his hand. Pei Jun's steps suddenly changed, and he quickly pulled his body back, instantly dodging the murderous black knife, but several rays of cold light suddenly flashed in his consciousness. In the darkness, a black iron net that completely blended in with the night suddenly enveloped Mr. Pei. The attack just now was just a trap. Pei Jun understood instantly. The black iron net shrank, preventing Pei Jun from making any further movements. Tu Yu held a black knife in his hand and walked up to Pei Jun. His eyes were filled with murderous intent and he said, "Did you kill Qing Mei and the others? Where is that thing in your hand?" Pei Jun remained silent. Tu Yu sneered, "It doesn't matter if you don't say it. I have plenty of ways to make you talk. Take away." Tu Yu finished speaking in a cold voice, and just as he was about to turn around, he saw a hint of joking on the lips of Pei Jun, who was entangled in the iron net. Where to go? Tu Yu suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. I saw golden lines suddenly appearing on Pei Jun's arms, and the extremely hard black iron mesh was torn apart by Pei Jun's bare hands. With the clanging sound of the iron chains falling to the ground, Pei Jun's eyes were fierce. He raised his hand and punched directly towards Tu Yu in front of him. Tu Yu looked shocked and shouted, "Shot!" Boom! There was a loud noise, and fire suddenly flashed in the darkness in the distance. Pei Jun instantly felt as if his whole body was being stared at by a poisonous snake, and a severe fatal crisis arose in his heart. Sniper! Before the thought could come to an end, a flash of light instantly cut through the darkness. There was no time to activate the Sanqing bell. The spiritual energy in Pei Jun's body was running wildly and automatically, and the diamond patterns all over his body instantly enveloped his whole body. The bullet was already close, and the hair all over Pei Jun's body exploded. He could only take half a step back. The violent bullet tore through the air and instantly passed by his cheek, leaving a deep scar visible to the bone. The blood slid down, and Pei Jun felt the pain on his cheek, and the murderous intent in his eyes became stronger. Before the sniper could fire again, Pei Jun took out a worn-out talisman from his arms. It was the Nine Heavens Divine Thunder talisman that he had obtained in the ghost market that day. Ling Qi waved, and the talisman in his hand burned out instantly. The sniper lurking in the darkness in the distance saw that Pei Jun had barely escaped. Just as he was about to take aim and shoot again, he suddenly felt a biting chill coming over his head. The sniper looked up blankly. I saw several black clouds suddenly gathering in the darkness above my head, and thunder was moving among the black clouds. The sniper looked horrified in his eyes. He quickly picked up the sniper rifle on the ground and ran away, but it was too late. Boom! A deafening thunder. The heaven and earth shook, and thunder struck down instantly like a prison. The sniper who had just stood up was instantly turned into charcoal and fell to the ground in a daze. In the distance, not far from here, I saw a row of motorcades speeding towards where Pei Jun was. Sitting in the car was none other than Shen Ruo, who had come out of heaven and earth. At this time, Shen Ruo looked ahead with a surprised expression. According to the information she received, Pei Jun was right in front. Before reaching the place, Shen Ruo suddenly heard a harsh explosion in the darkness in the distance, and a beam of fire could be seen bursting out in the distance. An exclamation sounded in the headset. Sniper! Shen Ruo looked shocked and quickly ducked to avoid it. But nothing happened after a few seconds, and there was no casualty report in the headset. Shen Ruo looked up in surprise. Look into the distance again. Then she saw a scene that shocked her beyond measure. In the darkness in the distance, the originally calm night was instantly covered with layers of black clouds, and countless thunderbolts shining with dazzling purple light were swimming among them like thunder snakes. Boom! The thunder was like a prison, lighting up the entire night. Countless thunder snakes violently slashed towards the ground. The location is exactly where the sniper shot just now. Still far away, Shen Ruo could clearly feel the shocking power brought by the thunder. He didn't need to think too much to know that the sniper was probably dead. What's the situation? Shen Ruo took a breath of air and looked into the distance with a shocked expression. Countless exclamations rang out from the headset. After calming down, Shen Ruo's eyes were filled with endless surprise. To say that this thunder appeared by chance would be too much of a coincidence. It is not the rainy season in Hangzhou now, so there is no thunder at all on weekdays. Not to mention such violent and shocking thunder. Shen Ruo had never heard of it. And looking at the surrounding night, except for the thunder just now, the night in other places is still calm as usual. In addition, the location and timing of the thunder strike are too coincidental. The sniper had just fired, and the thunderbolt struck down directly, and it struck exactly where the sniper was. So this thunder doesn't seem to appear by chance at all, more like caused by man. Shen Ruo was suddenly shocked by his thoughts, his eyebrows knitted tightly together, his eyes filled with disbelief. How can this be? Shen Ruo murmured with a dull expression. But then, a domineering figure appeared in her mind, and Shen Ruo looked startled. Mr. Pei. Shen Ruo thought of what Pei Jun did that day. Time stopped and bullets stopped. The same mysterious and weird, the same unbelievable, the methods are very human. And Mr. Pei is right in front. If that's the case, then. There was suffocating despair in Shen Ruomei's eyes, and her beautiful face began to turn pale. Finally taking a deep breath, Shen Ruo gritted his teeth and ordered with trembling. Keep going. Ahead, Tuyu and others all saw the thunderous thunder in the distance, and even saw Pei Jun's action of activating the talisman just now. Everyone's cruel expressions were mixed with a hint of fear. Tuyu looked at Pei Jun in shock and exclaimed. Fantasy. Who the hell are you? Tuyu exclaimed with a shocked expression. He had seen the power of divine objects with his own eyes before, and he knew the power of divine objects better than anyone else. The violent thunder that just struck down is the power of a divine object. However, it is not possible for ordinary people to activate the divine objects at all. There are only a very few people in the world who can activate the divine objects. Tuyu's expression was full of disbelief. He had only seen it once at the company headquarters. At that time, someone at the headquarters used a magical creature to attract the holy fire of heaven and earth, which burned a long river dry in an instant. Extremely scary. It left an indelible shock in Tuyu's heart at that time. Isn't he working so hard to complete the mission and collect ancient artifacts just to get into the eyes of the company's senior executives and obtain the means to activate the divine artifacts? Let yourself master this terrifying power. But Tuyu looked at Pei Jun in front of him with a horrified expression, and said crazily. Shoot and kill him. Being able to activate a divine object is beyond human power. Tuyu didn't care about the impact of using firearms in the suburbs and quickly gave the order. Otherwise, your life will be gone in a moment. After hearing the captain's order, the attackers around immediately drew their guns, looked at Mr. Pei in the center with fierce eyes, and pulled the trigger hard. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, bursts of fire lit up the night from all directions. When Shen Ruo drove there, he saw a scene that shocked everyone before he even got out of the car. I saw Pei Jun standing quietly in the night, surrounded by countless gun-wielding men with murderous intentions. Before Shen Ruo could understand the situation, the people around him had already pulled the trigger. Gunshots rang out one after another in the night, and the dark night was lit up by tongues of fire from all directions at this moment. Shen Ruomei's eyes widened and she exclaimed, "No!" She had a strong hatred for Mr. Pei in her heart, and she wanted to cut this man into pieces to retaliate for the humiliation. But the premise of all this is to find my brother. For so many years, Pei Jun is the only one who knows the news about his younger brother. If Pei Jun dies, the only hope for so many years will be completely dissipated. Mr. Pei cannot die. He must die in her hands. So after seeing the scene just now, Shen Ruo subconsciously exclaimed. But it was too late, the sharp bullets had torn the air, making sharp hissing sounds, and shot towards Pei Jun in the center. Shen Ruo paused, the light in his eyes instantly disappeared, and he stumbled 2 steps with a look of despair. Although Pei Jun showed extraordinary skills that day, he could hover the bullets she fired and even stop time for a moment. But she was the only one who shot at that time. But now in the darkness in all directions, there are people shooting. Shen Ruo even heard the sound of submachine gun shooting. How to resist this? All is lost. After more than 10 years of searching, the only hope disappeared before her eyes. Shen Ruo looked painful and closed his eyes. But the next second, the exclamations of his subordinates came from the headset. This. Shen Ruo opened her eyes in surprise, and then saw a scene that she would never forget. Under the cover of night, Pei Jun stood quietly in the center of the crowd. A flash of green light appeared in his hand, and the clear ringing of the bell continued to echo in the night. The sharp bullets fired from all directions did not kill Pei Jun directly as Shen Ruo expected. Instead, he instantly stopped a few meters away from Pei Jun. Just like what I saw in the box that day. Pei Jun stood quietly. Flaming bullets surrounded Pei Jun. Time around Pei Jun seemed to have stopped at this moment. Weird and shocking, the mysterious and shocking scene before her eyes made Shen Ruo's eyes widen. It's this mysterious method again. The center of the battlefield. The spiritual energy in his body was consumed rapidly, and the crisis coming from all directions made Pei Jun dare not stay at all. With a move of swallowing water, he instantly escaped from the circle of bullets. The bullets that were stationary in all directions resumed firing, but they all missed. Pei Jun exhaled. Using the Sanqing bell to perform such a large-scale control, the spiritual energy in his body was too much. Without enough time to take a breath, Pei Jun waved his hands, and the spiritual energy in his body suddenly activated. In the darkness from all directions, countless weird snake-like vines instantly emerged from the darkness and attacked the crowd in front of them. Pei Jun suddenly stepped forward and ran towards the crowd in front of him. 2 in the team looked horrified and shouted, "Shot!" But it's too late. Strange vines suddenly appeared in the darkness and entangled everyone instantly, and many people's hands were directly tied together by the vines. I couldn't move at all, I could only pull the trigger randomly. Then Pei Jun rushed in front of everyone in a blink of an eye, and a strange and mysterious red light suddenly bloomed in his eyes. A red sun was reflected in the eyes of everyone he saw, and their expressions were dull. Gifted with magical powers, sunset. Since acquiring this innate magical power, Pei Jun has never used it, but now it finally comes in handy. Shen Ruo and others in the distance looked in shock at Pei Jun's fierce counterattack in front of them. At the moment when Pei Jun got out of trouble, he waved his hands, and the crowd in front who was preparing to attack all twisted and entangled, and fired randomly. Shen Ruo was too far away to see clearly the vines surging in the darkness. He only felt that the scene in front of him was too weird. Then I saw Pei Jun rushing to the front of the crowd. Wherever he passed, everyone fell into a daze and put down the trigger that was about to be pulled. It was as if he had lost his soul. Shen Ruo looked shocked, her red lips slightly opened. She felt that her worldview and cognition had been strongly impacted today. It was like being run over crazily by an out-of-control heavy truck, and finally crushed to pieces. What kind of method is this? Close your eyes. In the chaotic team, Tuyu shouted crazily with his eyes closed. It has to be said that the strength of the team led by Tuyu cannot be underestimated. Close cooperation in many means. Among them are many people with extremely rich experience in life and death combat. As soon as the first few people were attracted by the vision in Pei Jun's eyes, several people had already reacted. He quickly closed his eyes. Pei Jun looked at the few remaining people who were not drawn into the fantasy with a playful look. You can't beat him with your eyes open, why not with your eyes closed? A ferocious smile appeared on the corner of Pei Jun's mouth, golden light patterns appeared vaguely on his body, and he flew a kite into the forest and into the chaotic crowd. The fist in his hand was like a bow, and he struck violently. Suddenly, blood splattered under the night, and people fell everywhere they passed. Tuyu's eyes were red, he looked at Pei Jun who was walking towards him with a look of resentment, and he yelled in a mad voice. The Tai creature will not let you go. You can't escape. Pei Jun sneered disdainfully. I am waiting. After saying that, he punched out without hesitation. Boom. The ferocious face was directly blasted by Pei Jun's punch, and blood and bones rose into the sky. The battle under the night also came to an end with Tuyu's death, and all the figures around him had fallen to the ground. Pei Jun shook off the blood on his fist and looked at the mess on the ground with a fierce expression. This is the most embarrassing battle since rebirth, and also the most enjoyable one. After this battle, Pei Jun became more comfortable with all his methods, and the fighting spirit in his heart became even higher. Lights flashed in the distance, and a row of motorcades came speeding towards him. Pei Jun looked sideways and saw Shen Ruo sitting in the car. Pei Jun raised his eyebrows slightly. Unexpectedly, this woman actually came looking for her. After parking the car, Shen Ruo slowly got out of the car and looked at the scene in front of him with a complicated expression. A bunch of car lights illuminate the night. I saw Pei Jun standing in front with fierce eyes, his body covered with blood and broken corpses, especially his cheeks and hands, which were dripping with blood. Coupled with the endless blood and corpses on the ground all around, it makes people feel like the person in front of them has just climbed out of hell. Shen Ruo suppressed the shock in his eyes and spoke hesitantly. Are you okay? I saw the fierceness in Pei Jun's eyes disappear. He chuckled, raised his eyebrows and said. You still know how to care about your master. One word dispersed the blood in the night, and also dispersed the shock and worry in Shen Ruo's eyes. Shen Ruo's chest rose and fell violently, and he glared at Pei Jun and shouted through gritted teeth. You. Looking at the angry Shen Ruo, Pei Jun chuckled, stopped teasing her, turned around and glanced around with a cold expression. Have your people clean up the scene. After saying that, he got into Shen Ruo's car, then raised his eyebrows and looked at Shen Ruo who was still standing outside the car. Boarding. Shen Ruo snorted coldly, finished ordering his men, and stepped into the car. Pei Jun reported the address of the villa, and the car sped towards the foothills of Tianmu Mountain. Back row. Pei Jun leaned on the car and closed his eyes to meditate, recovering the spiritual energy that had completely dried up in his body. As the top treasure in the world, the Sanqing bell consumes a huge amount of energy when used. If faced with Shen Ruo's situation that day, Pei Jun would still have a lot of energy left. But facing today's situation, it's a bit difficult. The stronger the target controlled and the wider the range, the more spiritual energy the Sanqing bell consumes. Tonight, he stopped the bullets that were pouring in from all directions, and almost instantly drained 2/3 of the spiritual energy in his body. The subsequent spells also consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Fortunately, technique, as a natural magical power, consumes less spiritual energy, otherwise Mr. Pei would not be able to survive until the end. Even so, the spiritual energy in his body dried up completely in the end, leaving not a drop. Now that Pei Jun got in the car, he began to recover faster. Shen Ruo turned his head and looked at the person beside him. The man in front of her was a few years younger than her, but his methods were more cold-blooded and ruthless. He killed people without blinking an eye, and he also had mysterious and treacherous powers. What other secrets does this person have? And as she got closer, she also noticed a hint of fatigue between Pei Jun's brows and a deep bone wound on his cheek. Obviously tonight's battle is not going to be easy. I am afraid that all the strength of this man has been exhausted. If A bold idea suddenly flashed through Shen Ruo's mind, and his heart started pounding. What if I do it now? As soon as the thought passed through Shen Ruo's mind, Pei Jun, who had his eyes closed and was repairing, suddenly opened his eyes, and the cruelty flashed through his eyes. Shen Ruo was startled. He didn't expect that Pei Jun would suddenly open his eyes, and he avoided the direct gaze with a panicked expression. Pei Jun sneered. Don't have thoughts that you shouldn't have. Be honest. Now that he has been promoted to the extraordinary, his perception is extremely sharp, and Shen Ruo is so close, even if the murderous intention is weak, he can instantly detect it. Of course, he knew that this murderous intention was not enough to make Shen Ruo take action. He just wanted to warn this restless woman. Return to the villa. Pei Jun went into the house to take a shower, leaving Shen Ruo standing alone in the living room with a complicated expression. The cold water fell from the head, making the tired look on Pei Jun's face fade a lot. While Pei Jun washed the blood on his body, he paid attention to Shen Ruo in the living room with his consciousness. Shen Ruo paused in the living room for a moment, seemingly struggling, then walked towards Pei Jun's room, and finally stopped outside the house. Shen Ruo stretched out his hand to turn the door handle, but his outstretched hand stopped halfway, with a look of confusion in his expression. After a long pause, Shen Ruo finally returned to the living room without opening the door. When Pei Jun came out, Shen Ruojung was standing quietly in the corner of the living room, wearing a low-cut red dress like a bright rose in bloom. Pei Jun threw the medicine in his hand to Shen Ruo. Wipe it for me. After saying that and sitting on the sofa, Shen Ruo took the medicine and came over, frowning and wiping the wound on Pei Jun's face. Pei Jun stretched out 3 fingers and spoke slowly. 3 things done. First, clean up the scene tonight so as not to attract official attention. Second, send someone to dig out Taiyi Biology's base in Hangzhou. As he spoke, a murderous intent flashed in Pei Jun's eyes. In his previous life, he came from the darkness, and he never waited until others came to his door if he had a grudge. Either kill him or disappear. Third, I still have 20 million in hand. You can use some more to take down all the things I have designated, no matter what the means. With that said, he handed a piece of paper to Shen Ruo. It's less than a month before the revival of Xinhua, and now countless overt or covert forces are paying attention to these antique cultural relics, so he has to take action as soon as possible. Any questions? Pei Jun looked into Shen Ruo's eyes. This is why he wants to lay out and control the power. Having power can save him a lot of trouble. Free up his time. No problem. Shen Ruo nodded slightly, then looked at Pei Jun and hesitated to speak. Pei Jun chuckled and said lightly. Taoshan County, Yunling City. Shen Ruo's hand movements paused, and a touch of surprise appeared in his eyes. After applying the medicine, Pei Jun waved his hand, indicating that Shen Ruo could leave. Shen Ruo stood up and whispered, "Thanks." Then he quickly left the room. Pei Jun watched Shen Ruo swaying out of the door, his eyes flashing with thoughts. The heat was almost over, and he originally thought he could take down Shen Ruo tonight, but he didn't expect that this woman didn't open the door in the end. It seems like this woman still has some persistence in her heart. The twisted melon is not sweet. He's not in a hurry. A sneer appeared on the corner of Pei Jun's mouth. Yunling City. The 100,000 mountains of the future are a paradise for monsters. They are also among the first batch of Nagawa Osawa to be resurrected during the mythical resurgence period. One of the top 10 forbidden areas in the previous life. According to Pei Jun's concern, the recovery of Yunling City has now begun. Pei Jun has recently seen the news of wild beasts hurting people in Yunling City. There are even more dangers and weirdness lurking in the endless mountains. This kind of place is not something she can just go to if she wants to, or can go back if she wants to. The second day, it was still in the box in the heaven and earth. At this time, there were several stern figures standing in the box, all of whom were Shen Ruo's confidants. At this time, Shen Ruo was heard giving orders in a deep voice. Jiazi, thank you for taking a team of operatives to Taoshan County, Yunling City, to find out if there is a person named Shen Lin. Or someone who looks like me. Yes. In the room, a steady middle-aged man responded in a deep voice. Our power in Yunling City cannot be radiated, so we must proceed with caution. There was a hint of worry in Shen Ruo's eyes. After Jiazi walked out of the door, Shen Ruo continued to give orders and mobilized all hands to complete the 3 tasks assigned by Pei Jun. Although Pei Jun didn't say anything, but Shen Ruo knew that if she couldn't complete the task, neither she nor Shen Lin would be able to survive. Tai biological base. In an office, a majestic man in his 40s or 50s said in a deep voice. There's no news about you and the others. No. Several people in front of him shook their heads. Captain Tu said yesterday that there was a tale that they had not solved in their last mission. He led the team to deal with the tale. Deal with the tale. The majestic man snorted coldly and said with a somewhat angry expression. It takes a fully armed combat team to deal with the tale. A bunch of trash. The majestic man slammed the table suddenly. It's impossible for an entire team to disappear without a trace. There will definitely be clues left behind. Send me people to find them. Now that Yongsheng technology is expanding faster and faster, Hangzhou's fundamentals must be maintained. It delayed the headquarters plan, and I made him walk around without food. Thanks for the subscribe and support my channel.